We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Amud Beis in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 30b. On the previous summit, the Brisa was discussing a case where a person lends money to an ani, and the arrangement is that lender will keep the meiser ani for himself as a repayment of the loan. Then what happens is the ani dies. So the first Tanner of Eliezer ben Yaakov, he said that still the lender can keep the meiser ani for himself as a repayment of the loan. Bechezkas aniye Yisrael. And Rav Achi said Bechezkas aniye Olam. And the Gemara said, what's the difference between those two opinions? And the Gemara now says, Ika beinayu, the difference is aniye kusiyim. If it's poor people from the kusiyim, from the Samaritans, Rashi explains aniye kusiyim, shemein aniye Yisrael ba'ir. According to the second Tana, according to Rav Achi, let's say there are no Jewish poor people in that particular city. V'yesh aniye kusiyim, but there are aniyim from the kusiyim. Mafresh letzorcham v'yakvim lasma. He can still separate the ma'aser ani, keep it. It will be as if those aniye kusiyim are paying him back. Shafheim zochim bohem, the kusiyim geirei. The point over here is this Tana Rav Achi holds the Kusiyim are considered true converts. They're considered part of the Jewish people. That's a machlokas in general, whether the Kusiyim are considered true converts or not. Well, Tanakama, but according to Tanakama, they're not considered true converts. Geire arayo same. They are geire. They became converts because they were scared of the lions. That's a story in Tanakh. V'lo yafresh b'shvilam ela b'shvil aniyei Yisrael yafresh b'chol makom shem. So he can't separate based on the aniyei Kusiyim. Rather, he has to separate again based on Jewish aniyim, wherever they might be. And the Gemara continues, the same Brisa, the same Tosefta continues, Hashir ha'ani, if the ani who borrowed the money becomes wealthy, so now he's not entitled to Meiser ani, Ein mafresh olav. So in that case, the person who is the lender is not able to separate that Meiser ani now and use it and keep it as if he's being repaid by the ani. V'zoch halo b'mashab yodo, that wealthy person, he takes whatever money he borrowed, he's now zocha that money, and he does not need to pay it back. And so the Gemara asks Rabbanan, now according to the Rabbanan, Ma'ishna lemisa davat hakanta, why did the Rabbanan say, if the ani dies, we're going to have some kind of solution over here? We're going to say you'll separate bechezkas aniye Yisrael. U'ma'ishna la'ashiras, and what's the difference by the case where the ani becomes wealthy? The lo avat hakanta, that the Rabbanan did not make any takanta. Why did they make any kind of takana, any kind of solution in a situation where the individual became wealthy, just like they do in a situation where the ani died? And the Gemara answers to that, Misa shchicha, death is common, so they enacted a solution for that case. Ashirus lo shchicha, but wealth is something that's not common, and therefore they did not enact any solution in that situation. Amar Papa says, Hainu dam riinchi, that's what people say, Chavrach meis, asher is asher lo sa asher. If somebody says your friend died, that you should believe. If somebody says your friend became wealthy, don't believe that. Again, that is something that is not common. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, meis tzarech litol reshus v'chulu. It said, let's say the person died, meaning to say if a person lent money to a Kohen or to a Levi or to an ani, and the terms of the loan were that he's going to be repaid by keeping the truma or the meiser for himself. But if the Kohen or the Levi or the ani died, and again this loan was not made in Bezdin, so then if he wants to keep the truma or the meiser as a repayment of the loan, he has to get permission for the yarshim. Now there's a machlokas Rishonim how to learn this next Gemara. We're going to understand this next Gemara like the Rishonim who say that this next Gemara is going on the next line in the Mishnah. The next line of the Mishnah was, if the loan was made in Bezdin, then you don't need to take rishos from the yarshim. Then even if you don't have any permission from the yarshim, still the lender can keep the truma or the meiser for himself as a repayment on the loan. And on that line, the Gemara now says, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Rebbe Omer Yorshin Sheyarshu. Rebbe says, when we're talking about yarshim over here, that in this case, if the loan was made in Bezdin and you can take the property and you can continue the arrangement with the yarshim, it's specifically by yarshim who inherited their father. And the Gemara says, Umi iko yarshin de lo yarsi. Is there such a thing as yarshim who don't inherit? Don't all yarshim inherit? And the Gemara explains, Alamar Rabbi Yochanan, rather Rabbi Yochanan says, Shayarshu karka v'lo shayarshu ksafim. This idea that again, if the loan was made in Bezdin, the arrangement continues and the lender can keep the truma or the meiser for himself, that only applies if the yarshim inherited land. But if they did not inherit land, if all they inherited was money, then this halacha will not apply. And Rashi says, Shayarshu karka sha'aleim mutal hamitzvah lefroach choves avian. Again, we're going to assume that Rashi's talking about that last case of the Mishnah where the loan was made in Bezdin. But in any case, what Rashi then is saying is, Shayarshu karka, if they inherited land, the halacha is in general, yarshim do not have to pay back the loans of their father unless they inherit land. Because if they inherit land, then there's a lien on that property, there's a lien on the land. So therefore, if they inherit land, they now have a general obligation to pay back the debt of their father. And that's why in that situation, so then the arrangement continues and the lender can keep for himself the truma or the meiser as a repayment of the loan. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yonasan says, Hiniach mole machat gova mole machat. If he leaves a tiny bit of land like a needle, so that's all that can be collected. Whatever amount of land was left, that's how much you can collect in terms of the Truma and the Meiser. That's how much of the loan, of the value of the loan, that can be collected in this fashion. Mole kardam gova mole kardam. And similarly, if it's mole kardam, which essentially means a lot of land, so then you can collect a lot of the loan in this same fashion by keeping the Truma and the Meiser for himself, etc. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, afilu hiniach mole machat, even if the person just left over a tiny amount of land, gova mole kardam, still he's able to collect the full loan. Uchamaisa de Ketina de Abaya. This is similar of the episode of Ketina de Abaya. And Rashi explains, mole machet, the amount of a needle, kolomar hiniach karka mu'at, meaning very little land. Ein ze mafresh b'cheskas yarshin, ela kashir demei karka. He's only allowed to separate the Truma and the Meiser, use that as a repayment, according to the amount of the value of the land. Mole kardam, kolomar karka harbe. Mole kardam is a way of saying a lot of land. Afilu hiniach mole machet, gova mole kardam. The other opinion was, Rabbi Yochanan's opinion was, even if they just have a little land, they can collect the full loan. Kolomar kol chov, they can collect the whole obligation. Lefisho yachol litrof, velachzer velitrof kol shashi ifdu mimenu. The idea over here is we're about to see with the episode of the Ketina de Abaya. The idea is it's like he collects, when a person collects land, he can collect the land, then the person he took the land from will then redeem the land with money, and then he can collect the land again and essentially collect his entire obligation that way, and that's what happens here as well. Kiyahu Maisa de Ketina de Abaya, like the Maisa of Ketina de Abaya, B'misha Yanasi B'Ksubas. This is an episode in Ksubas. Dahu da have a maski b'meya zuze v'shache v'shave Ketina shavi chamishim. He left a small, that's Ketina. He left a small parcel of property that was worth 50, but he really owed 100. So Asa Balchov Tarfua, so then the Balchov came and he took the land. Now he's got half of his debt he collected from the Yarshim. Asu Yasmi Yahavi Lechamshin V'Silku. So the Yisomim came, gave him 50, took back the land. Hadar Asa Tarfa, then he goes and he collects the land again, and the idea is again, even that small amount of land can be enough to allow him to collect the entire loan. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Yisrael sha'amar leLevi. If Yisrael says to a Levi, Meiser yeshlach biyadi, there's Meiser of yours in my possession, I owe you Meiser. Ein choshen l'trumas Meiser shabo. We don't have to be concerned that there's Trumas Meiser within that Meiser. In general, when you give Meiser to a Levi, the Levi then separates what's called Trumas Meiser and gives that to the Kohen. However, let's say the Yisrael says to the Levi, Kor Meiser yeshlach biyadi, a kor, a specific amount of Meiser, that belongs to you and I have it in my possession, then choshen l'trumas Meiser shabo. Then we have to be concerned that there might be Trumas Meiser within it. And the Gemara says, my Kamar, what does this brisa mean to say? What does it mean that in one case we're concerned with Trumas Meiser, and one case we are not? Amar Abaya says, Hachi Kamar. This is what the brisa is saying. Yisrael sha'amar leLevi. Yisrael says to a Levi, Meiser yeshlach biyadi vehelach domav. There's Meiser of yours that I have. Here is the value of that Meiser. Ein choshen shema aso trumas Meiser al mokom acher. So the idea over here is the Yisrael is essentially trying to keep that Meiser, and the Yisrael is saying, instead of me giving you the Meiser, I want to give you the value of the Meiser. So we don't have to be concerned that maybe what happened was now the Levi said, well, this Meiser is really my Meiser. I'm going to designate all of the Meiser as trumas Meiser on other Meiser that I have, on other Meiser that I have received, and now it's going to essentially mess up the Yisrael, because all of that Meiser that he has, the Levi actually secretly made a Trumas Meiser. You don't have to be concerned with that. But Kor Meiser Yeshlach Biyadi, but if he tells the Levi the exact amount, a Kor of Meiser, Vehelach Domav, and here's the money, and therefore I want to keep this Kor of Meiser, so then the Levi might go behind his back and he'll say, I know exactly how much it is, and I'll use it on 9 other Korin, let's say. It'll be 1/10, it'll be Trumas Meiser, and I'm going to use it as Trumas Meiser. I'll designate it all as Trumas Meiser. Choshen Shemaso Trumas Meiser al Makam Acher. The Yisrael has to be concerned that maybe the Levi went ahead again behind his back and made that core. Now that he knows the exact amount of it, he made a Trumas Meiser. That's the explanation, says Abaya, of the Brisa. The Gemara says, Atu B'Rashi asking, are we dealing here with wicked people? Can that possibly be the interpretation of the Brisa? The Shakli Demei Mashvi Le Trumas Meiser. You think this Levi is going to take money instead of the Meiser, and then behind the Yisrael's back, he's going to render it all Trumas Meiser so he can fix his own Meiser that he has in his possession? That does not make sense. Elamar of Mesharshi Brei Ravidi, rather of Mesharshi Brei Ravidi says a different suggestion in what the Brisa means. Hachi Kamar, this is what the Brisa means. Yisrael Shamar LeBen Levi, Yisrael says to the son of a Levi, Meiser LaAvicha Biyadi, so there was Meiser belonged to your father that's in my possession. Heilach Domav, here's the money and I'll keep the Meiser. Ein Choshen Shema Aso Aviv Trumas Meiser al Makam Acher. There we're not concerned that the father had designated previously, that the father previously had made this Meiser Trumas Meiser for some other produce that he had. But Kor meiser lavicha biyadi. But if he says it's an exact amount, a core of meiser of your father's is in my possession, v'heilach domav, and here is the money, choshen shemaso aviv trumas meiser al mokom acher. So then we are concerned maybe the father made a trumas meiser on some other produce that he had somewhere else. But the Gemara says to that also doesn't make sense. There's a halacha we mentioned earlier that when you take off trumas and meisers, you're supposed to do it nearby. It has to be in physical proximity. So do we really suspect the father over here? We don't suspect in general chaverim, people who keep the halacha. We don't suspect them of taking off truma when it's not in proximity, when it's not nearby. So why should we be concerned, even in the case of kor meiser? Why should we be concerned that it's trumas meiser? So Elamar Ravashi, rather, Ravashi says, here's the explanation of the Brisa. Hachi Kamar, this is what it means to say. Ben Yisrael Sha'amar LeLevi. This is the son of Yisrael, says to a Levi, Kach Amar Li Abba. This is what my father told me. Meiser Lach Biyadi, in my possession I have your Meiser. Oh, Meiser Lavicha Biyadi, or it's your father's Meiser that I have in my possession. Choshin L'Trumas Meiser Shabo. In that situation, we are concerned with the Trumas Meiser within it, meaning to say, Kevan de Lokit, since it was not a set amount, lo have a misakin le balabayas, the balabayas, meaning the father, the Yisrael, he may not have fixed it. What that means to say is that this Ben Yisrael, he now has within his possession this Meiser from his father. He's paying off the Levi, he's giving the Levi the value, and he's keeping it for himself. But we still have to know, did the father take off Trumas Meiser? And the answer is, since it wasn't a clear amount, the father may not have separated Trumas Meiser. You have to be concerned there's Trumas Meiser mixed within this Meiser, essentially it's Tevel. But Kor Meiser Lach Biyadi. But let's say he was given an exact amount. My father told me that there's a core of Meiser of yours that's in my possession. Oh, Kor Meiser Lavicha Biyadi, or there's a core of Meiser that belonged to your father that's in my possession. So in that case, Ein Choshen L'Trumas Meiser Shabo. There, you don't have to be concerned that there's Trumas Meiser mixed within it, because we assume the father took care of it. Kevan, the kid, since it was a set amount, Tikune Tikne Balabayas. The Balabayas fixed it, meaning the father of the Yisrael fixed the situation, and therefore this son, he's now keeping this Meiser for himself. He does not have to be concerned that there's Trumas Meiser within it. He can assume that there was Trumas Meiser was already separated and taken care of. But the Gemara says, V'chiyesh lo reshus laBalabayas litrum Trumas Meiser. But does the Balabayas even have the ability to take off Trumas Meiser? In general, Trumas Meiser is taken off by the Levi. It's not taken off by Yisrael. That's what Rashi says over here. First Rashi says, Ein choshen, you don't have to be concerned. Shemuchzak Yisrael zeh, shetiknu kodem shemeis. In general, if it was a set amount, he was able to fix the situation. We know that Yisrael took off Trumas Meiser. Even though it's not really his obligation, we can assume he took care of it. But the Gemara then asks, does the Baal Bayis even have permission to do that? Litrum Trumas Meiser, Yisrael takes off Trumas Meiser. Haloena Meiser Shalo, it's not his Meiser. Elisha Levi, that was supposed to go to the Levi. V'havale Torem Shalomidas, essentially he's taking off Truma without the knowledge of the Levi. Does he have this permission? And the Gemara says, yes, he does in fact have such permission. Abba Elazar ben Gamla, because this is following the opinion, this Bryce is following the opinion of Abba Elazar ben Gamla. The Tanyas we learned in a Bryce, Abba Elazar ben Gamla, Omer Abba Elazar ben Gamla says, V'nechshav lachem trumaschem, this is a pasuk, says V'nechshav lachem trumaschem, it's going to be your truma, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph.